This program is intended for mature audiences. Parental discretion is advised.
There we are. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Pop Culture Podcast. It's freezing in Milwaukee. I'm really cold. I'm wearing a coat today. I've got a blanket in my lap. Man, I'm telling you, 49 hit me hard. Turned 49 last week. Now I'm just like in a cardigan. Whatever.
You gave up.
Jason Love is our guest this week. A man that was described by my co-host as Scott. This guy does everything, pretty much. You're a filmmaker, writer. What else do you do, Jason? Give us a lowdown on who Jason Love is.
That is definitely a hard question. Filmmaker is kind of a name I guess I've been more embracing. I do a lot of things with YouTube, video production, and sort of a lot of live events and programming. So in the sense of, so the way I got into filmmaking is I was a professional magician for many years. And then, so I still do that a little bit. And then also some balloon twisting. And then,
Sure.
And then when I also teaching filmmaking as well. So it kind of a lifetime of random things. Sort of.
Yeah, you know, funny thing, I was born into a family of entertainers, magicians.
Very cool.
My mom and my dad were both stage magicians. I grew up in it. I grew up on the stage. God, when I could walk, I was playing characters on stage in magic shows. So that was my childhood.
Where were they out of?
Milwaukee. My
awesome.
dad was Fred Jurgensen. His stage name was Kai Jurgens. My mom was Karen Ray. But yeah, in the 50s and 60s, they were the hottest magicians in the Midwest. They were traveling all over the place. And, you know, up until my dad died about 15 years ago, he owned a magic shop in Milwaukee, Theophilus Magic.
Oh, yeah. Okay,
yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, that was my dad. And yeah, that was my whole childhood. So I definitely relate to that. And he was a clown, too, Fabulous Freddy. So he did the balloons, too. And puppets and all that jazz.
And was the magic shop out of your house then?
It was out of his house, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I've been there. That's cool. I've only been there once, but
okay. Yeah, really cool store. But yeah, magic is my life too.
Out of curiosity, what kind of shows do you know? I mean, did he have like a specialty? He did like
he did stage shows. You know, he had big props. He didn't do much close-up magic. It was all like stage illusions. You know, guillotines. You know, I was always the one that tested the new guillotines, and it scared the crap out of me as a 9-year-old kid having my arm chopped off. But
yeah,
you know,
did he do a lot of schools, or did he have like a certain type of clientele that he specialized in?
You know, he did a lot of blue and gold dinners. Did a lot of lot of corporate events.
Yeah.
You know, and in his later, when he was closer to retirement, he did a lot of magic shows for you know, birthday parties, things like that. And I was Abbott the Rabbit, which I fucking hated that. It was this rabbit suit with this giant head. You know, of course, these costumes are built for, you know, the looks, not for comfort. So I get that, and I regret doing that because it was hell. Did a lot of volunteer shows too, and those were never fun.
Yeah, that's amazing. I'll have to ask around. I definitely remember going, and I probably went there when that would have been like 2005, maybe. I can't remember if I went while I was in college, like when we were pretty early in my career. But a buddy of mine who got me into magic.
Yeah, he passed in 2004.
Okay, it must have been.
Well, the store was going strong until he passed.
Okay.
I've got a bunch of pictures I posted on Facebook from his scrapbook. I'll post some more and I'll show you. But yeah, it's fascinating.
What type of magic do you specialize in?
Like everything else, I kind of go all over. I always liked street magic. I wanted to be more staged. I could never kind of master that market. I've done a little bit with it.
You need eyeliner.
Yes. Well, and I actually came from sort of a sideshow background, so I had a lot of that, which in magic business would be called geek magic, but where, you know, like fire eating and bed of nails and human blockhead. So these old.
I do human blockhead. I do.
Yeah.
I'm really into sideshow stuff.
Yeah,
so.
And that's where it started. It started with just an interest in well, magic as well, but like the thing about sideshow was that it was real. And so as kind of when I was around 18, it became this thing of like I learned magic and I did magic, but I was scared of. Oh, that's amazing.
It was like that's my mom and dad.
Oh, that's amazing. Very cool.
Arabian Enchantment, which is probably not a show that would go over well.
Well, yeah, that's
It's my dad in Oriental Fantasy, another show that wouldn't fly today. Yeah, my dad was what white could be.
I'm trying to think of there's a famous guy for that. Is it something Chan, who did a whole Oriental show, but it was that he was a white guy.
Yeah, Ching Ling Su.
Yeah, yep, exactly, yeah.
He lived as a Chinaman though. Like he embraced it. Like it wasn't just a stage persona for him. That's actually how he lived his life, off stage, and it was
That's awesome. Yeah, I think they did a documentary I meant to watch, but never did.
Yeah.
So a lot of my so from that, doing street shows ended up being partially too because my first like big gig was with Six Flags in Chicago. So I was a magician there for a couple of years, and I sort of had to learn very quickly. Like there was no time to like build up tension, and like it had to be something very visual and very like. Otherwise, because people aren't there to see a magic show, they're there to see rides, and I'm literally like stuffed between. I'm across from. If you guys are familiar with Six Flags, it was like the first year I was there. I was right at. It had like a farm theme, sort of eating area. There was a stage, and then they moved me over like across right near Bugs Bunny Land, and so I actually had basically they had gutted one of the sides from a game. So basically it was where a game used to be. And so I literally had like a game, playing sirens behind me. So it had to be very much like, start with fire eating and sort of build this crowd. And then as soon as that ended, like half my audience would disappear. And then I'd have to like, guillotine was next. And then it was like, okay, now I doubled that. Now like half of that one would disappear after that one. And so it was constantly like, okay, I have to keep, you had to introduce the next one as soon as you could. There was no time to like build up that tension. Unless it was in a funny way. So like fire eating, it's common where you're just like, I'm about to do it, and you get the crowd to cheer, and then they kind of bring in more people, and so very street performer esque. So that was, I would say that's my strongest, and then I kind of just when I do like corporate gigs or have done corporate gigs, it's kind of just like how do I adjust that to a stage show and slow it down and allow like that build up a little bit more. So. Yeah. So that's kind of like I would say that's my specialty.
Does magic help you pick up chicks?
It did for me when I was young.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, hell yeah.
I guess it did. Yeah. I guess especially especially younger. Yeah, I would say it definitely can help. Especially, I wasn't never like a bar scene stuff. So if you know a few tricks that work well in the bars, then you could really.
So my dad picked up my mom.
Yeah, I was gonna say I think that's kind of how I ended up picking up my wife as well. So
really,
fabulous Freddy right there.
So is it worth for a single guy all the hours that go into becoming a magician, or is it worth just swiping as fast as you can on Tinder? What's a better strategy?
I think you can learn some pretty easy tricks really fast.
Okay.
So I would definitely go
magician tricks.
Yeah, I would definitely go. Yeah, a few tricks at the bar. I'm like a shy person, so like magic's an easy way. So for me to like connect. So I think if it gives you an excuse to sort of talk and kind of be the center of attention for a few minutes, which is not like my normal unless I'm performing.
Yeah.
And so
this is my dad and his porn stash.
That's a good stash.
Later in life.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
This was at State Fair. Yeah, anyway.
And you have those up on, I'd check those out. You said they're up on your Facebook?
Yeah.
Your Facebook page? Yeah, I'll check them out. Yeah, I don't know much about the history of. So kind of becoming a magician, there's a lot of like groups, the magic groups. And I usually stayed away from them because their big thing was like learning new tricks. And that was never really my interest. Unless it was a stage trick, then it would be exciting. But like, you'd have these people who'd come and they're like, I learned a new trick. And I just be like, I just want to be a better performer. Like I want to like take my tricks and make them better. And so, and usually a lot of the people who are part of those clubs weren't, they were more just like hobbyists, which is cool. But I was at the point where it's just like, I'm really more interested in the business side a little bit more and how to come up with a better presentation or maybe new jokes and less like how to do a sixth card trick that I'll never use in my show. And I basically I do one card trick, but I can use it in a couple ways, and it's like super simple and it does well. Just because I don't have the patience for those types of to learn all the card tricks.
It seems like a big leap, like kid's birthday party, stage a Summerfest. That's a big jump. How do you? Where's the middle league magicians? Where do they work?
And that's actually pretty common. I think it depends on where they live. Because I do similar. Where I didn't do Summerfest, but I do. I'm trying to think of some of the bigger events. Usually like a corporate gig, like it'll be like I've done for not like all of Facebook, but like Facebook's offshoot of Chicago workers, and it's like literally so that's pretty common, especially if you don't travel. But there's just different tiers, right? There's like certain people who will do like one of the I guess clients, or whatever you want to call it, sort of the type is I regret not getting more into like the college shows. It's kind of where I was headed at one point, and that's sort of you get paid really well, but you have to be on the road a lot. Same with like cruise ships, its own thing. Theme parks itself. So there's all kinds of ways, and you don't necessarily even have to start birthday parties. I mean, it's really about just. I mean, early on, it's just about performing wherever you can, and then kind of getting a sense for. What's
your worst place to perform? Like, you ever get called to a bachelor party, and they're like, "I thought we were getting strippers. You got a magician here."
No, the worst I did. I won't say the name of the company. It's a big company, as far as like people would relatively know the name. But it was like a very corporate. And at that time, I was doing my more sideshow stuff, and I said, hey, this show's a little bit more on like the wild side, as far as like it might be better for like a bar or nightclub, or not necessarily nightclub, but like I was at that time I was doing a lot of like the dangerous sort of sideshow stuff, and it was not the right audience. Like, they were very corporate, and sometimes it does go over because those people have like a fun side, but it was definitely like like the human blockade is where you take a nail, I mentioned the blockade, and you pound it into your nose. So I do that, and I also do where you take a balloon and you put it up your nose, and it literally goes through your canal and comes out your mouth. So stuff like that, that's very like, I don't know if people really know Jim Rose anymore, but like kind of Jim Rose a little bit less than like his level. I'm not like swinging stuff around by piercings or anything, but I do, and so that audience was not right, and it was just a nightmare because you could just tell. Like they were, but I actually got a second gig because I was doing it at it wasn't actually, it was like a fancy bar. So it was like an upscale bar, and they were basically, their staff was there, and they actually kept, like they would stop working and watch. And so the owner of that said, "Yeah, I heard you did a show. It's very avant-garde." And so actually I got a second booking, but like the original booking was not, it was just not a good fit.
So you said that those sideshow ones are more real, and I went to medical school, and I was kind of blown away that there's actually 23 bones in the human skull. There's like a ton on the inside, your sphenoid and all kinds of stuff. When you're pounding a nail in there, you're actually pounding the nail in, right?
Yes and no.
Okay.
So it's easier, I think, than people realize to do that kind of stuff, and it depends a little bit on like your biology. So I always compare it. It's probably not a perfect comparison, but I always compare it to a piercing is what I always kind of how I describe it. So you get sort of used to larger and larger items. So it's like gauging your ear or anything else.
I met Melvin Burkhart a number of times. We toured with him. My dad, we did we did sideshows. We did a back end show, 10 and 1.
Yeah, cool.
With World of Wonders for a number of years when I was a kid, working with Ward Hall. Melvin Burkhart, he's the king of the human pinhead.
Oh, okay. It took me a second to realize who you were talking about, but yeah, he was. I know exactly who you're talking about now that you mentioned that he was the king of that. Yeah. So when you guys did that, how was was that even set up? Like, what was it literally a tent, or were you guys doing it in?
Yeah. It was a tent. Yeah, a big tent, and it was just a constant rotation of acts.
Yeah.
There was a blow off, Dr. Frankenstein, who was just a dude that had already pierced nipples, but he, put hooks in to pierce his nipples, and then he hooked up an empty car battery that, he pretended was heavy. But yeah, it was just a constant rotation. They had a few gaffes here and there, but there were 5 or 6 shows that were just constantly rotating throughout the day.
And would you do a blow off between each act, or would they?
No,
okay.
They would do 5 acts. People would hang around, and then they would look at the gaffes, then watch the shows, and then they would do the blow off and really encourage everybody. Hey, for an extra $1, come see Dr. Frankenstein. You won't imagine what he'll do.
Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah, and that was, I know, commonly one that I always kind of wanted to do was the girl to gorilla, which is
my dad did that. Yep.
Did he? Okay.
My dad did that. Yeah, that's an amazing trick. That scared the crap out of me as a kid. Before my dad did it, we saw it, and that just scared the crap out of me.
Do you want to describe it?
Gorilla. Yeah.
Well, basically, you've got this beautiful gorilla, and she's in a cage in a little jail cell, and she slowly turns into a gorilla. It's a really cool illusion.
Wow.
It's kind of no, I don't want to give it away, but it's a cool thing. Look it up online.
There was a filmmaker in a they did a screening of it of a film. I can't remember if the filmmaker is actually from Milwaukee, but they screened it in like a back of a bar somewhere in Milwaukee. That was all about someone who traveled with one in South America. I'll have to look it up. But it was interesting for sure, just because I can't even remember, because it was quite a few years ago. But I think they in South America had like a specific name for it. It was a very interesting, because it was sort of a history because I know like in South America and Latin, like I assume Mexico as well. Like a lot of that stuff's still more alive than it is here, and so there's the history lasted longer. Like I know that there were probably passed away now, but there were Siamese twins that were still, like, they just had to travel down there because it was really, no real way to run that type of show without, having political issues. So they would go down. They just basically just travel around South America and Mexico, hanging out in a trailer, and people paid to see them. Watch TV mostly is kind of what I got the sense of.
Right.
So.
Yeah. In the public, there was this big outcry against sideshows, live acts, these freaks, they're, how could we do this? How could we look at these people in these cages? And people didn't realize that this is the only way that they could earn money. And they made a lot of money. Freaks made a lot of money. They retired very wealthy people. Yeah. And when they ended that, people, because of outrage, these people had to go on government assistance, Yeah. That's sad.
I can't remember if it was a picture, if I just read the story, but there's a story of that with Siamese twin women, and they had like a picture where they basically went from that career to where one would, like, in a grocery store scan and the other one would bag. Like, that was like where they had to go, because like, where else do you get a job? Right. Like that. And so, and there was definitely some terrible, especially like anyone who had like mental illness. There were definitely people who treated terrible, but at the same time, there were other ones who were treated, that was the best job that they could really have. Yeah. And they loved it. They loved doing it. They loved touring and meeting people, and, so, but times change, I guess.
That's a shame. I know live performance, a lot of those people don't make as much money. How do you think the pandemic has done to just giving people basically 2 years off from an already struggling career?
All of the people I'm connected with are having a hard time. They're just making, and most of it is, I have the advantage that I'm not necessarily an extrovert. Like, my show is very much calculated, and to me, that's the fun of it. Isn't like, a lot of the people who are in the industry are like, they almost like need that. So I think that was part of like the hardest part for them is like they're used to that interaction, and I enjoy performing, but like, to me, there's like a safety of like being on the stage and like following my script, and then I like play off of my script, where like I said, a lot of performers, like they really crave it more than necessarily I do, And so that's the hardest part, I think, for them, on top of like, careers and whatnot. And so like quite a few of my friends are work the Ren Fair circuit, which is another circuit. We were talking about different avenues. And I know a lot of them are just, they're literally like used to meeting, like they have almost like it's like it becomes a family. And so it's basically like, on top of their normal family, their biological family, it's like they basically are all stuck, doing their own thing. So I think it's been really hard on a lot of them. And I know so there was a whole like, I'm trying to think how to phrase this. There's a whole like new thing that's popped up, which is the virtual events. And so some have embraced that. And I never really, because I do make videos and stuff, it was just one of the things I was like, I'm not going to, I just don't think it's the same thing. Like, I feel like if I'm going to do that, it doesn't work. But some I think have pulled it off pretty well. They come up with some cool ideas.
I know a number of comedians that's kind of in the area is since the pandemic, they've now got the 9-to-5 jobs and a steady paycheck and income. And they just said, I'm not going back. I'm not going back. This is so much better than the road life, that they've done for 20 years. Like, I don't have to worry about getting books. I don't have to worry about whatever. I have a paycheck every single week. I get up, go to work. They kind of like it. So I know lost a lot of comedians that way.
Yeah.
Is that the same? You're going to be losing some sideshow or?
I don't think so. I could definitely make sense with comedians because I think the comedian route is super hard. I tried kind of going that route for a little bit, and it's just so competitive. Like it's there's just tons of story of even like booking gigs. You're like super excited, you got a gig, and then like the person doesn't pay you or something. So I could totally see why. It's almost in some ways would be similar to the carnival circle a little bit, but I don't think there's as much in like the variety. I think a lot of the variety entertainers will stick around. I know a lot of them kind of halfway through during the summer kind of did. They were along with the virtual was like car events. So like people would come in basically like if you went to a drive-in theater and they would perform, or people would drive by. I think most of the variety entertainers have kind of worked, they can kind of adjust a little bit more, but yeah, I would think comedians would be a hard, because if you're doing that virtual, it's like you're competing against whatever the next big comedian special is. It's like, do I watch this guy or do I watch Netflix comedy
I know
special?
the timing on comedy is just for a quick example. Say you do 10 jokes, 2 of them are bombing. When you're talking like this, you don't hear an audience, and you will dwell on a dead joke where if you're on stage and you don't get a reaction, you quick snap and people forget about it and you're on to your next joke. So you just got to leave time to let it stew that your joke didn't hit. That's really hard with no reaction from the audience.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I if you don't mind, I was just thinking, since Tom, you know a lot about the biology is, so I was told with the balloon up the nose that I had to worry about like hairs or something like that. Do you know, have you heard of anything like that?
You're talking about just your nasal cavity hairs, or the hairs like the cilia that move stuff through your, like the phlegm and stuff? Okay.
Really, any of that should that be? Because it would, yeah. Because I do it with the super extreme, like there's sort of a level of sideshow. We'll do like they'll actually use condoms and they'll like suck it up and pull it out. Where I use just a balloon that I would twist. So there's still like that latex powder, but I was just curious if you've heard of anything with that.
I would be more worried about what's on your hand that you're putting in an internal cavity that's not supposed to be there, and now there's an infection. Okay. And whatever damage you do when you're doing the, I've seen the condom challenge, but I would just being clean.
Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah, I know that's big with. I was training a little bit to do sword swallowing, and that's a big thing with the sword swallowing. I never got past. I just never. I sort of stopped when I realized kind of how dangerous it was. I had. So when I started, I was using a clothes hanger, and it got like stuck, and so I had to like basically wait till like my muscles relaxed, and so then I was like, I'm not doing this.
Start with a clothes hanger. You don't start with the Braveheart sword that he throws.
That's right. Yeah.
John Red Lawrence is a friend of mine. He's a world record sword swallower. He swallows a truck axle in his show.
Oh, geez.
A truck axle.
Yep.
But I imagine that's got to be super, because the few that I've talked to, it kind of sounds like they're super paranoid about kind of that issue of like getting some type of weird infection. So they're constantly like cleaning everything before and after they hand, like very sterile, which you wouldn't think of as like a sideshow performer. Like you just think of,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What if you're like in California and an earthquake just starts happening and you got a truck axle down your throat? You don't know how big it is.
He's in his 70s, so I mean, he's done it for a while. I guess everything's gone okay so far. But he's got like Conan the Barbarian swords that he sticks down his gullet.
yeah.
Wow.
The neon ones are the ones that like still kind of weird me out. They do like whether they take a neon light, and so you can kind of see the light through their chest. Like I said, I would never do it, but just like watching, I just think of if that thing broke, or I don't know, just like that freaks me out the most for some reason specifically.
Yeah, they got all that gas in there. That's not.
I wonder if they're doing LEDs now. I never thought that would actually. I don't know if there's got to be an easier way to do it than having it be that neon gas would be, and all the shards if it broke for whatever reason.
Yep.
Those expensive light up lightsabers right down the throat. But you do a lot more than just sideshow act. I didn't even know we were getting onto this topic here.
Yeah. I do a lot of YouTube stuff as well. Actually, I do want to plug, so I don't forget. I do have I do a small animation festival that we just started called the Animation Celebration Fest, and that's coming up not this weekend but next weekend, and we're doing it virtual, so it'll be basically just a live stream, and we're just making it free. And we have like 50 mostly animated shorts, so it's like around 50 notes. It'll be like just one day. I think it's April 24th, whatever that Saturday is. So if people are interested, they just go to animationscelebrationfest.com and
Chris will bring that up.
Sign up.
That's awesome. You got a comic book out though, right? Man of Magic.
Yeah, and that that was quite a few years ago. Yeah,
2012.
And it's funny because that was there was a gamble, and part of the way I gambled with that was I made it magic related, so that if I couldn't get it, we funded it through Kickstarter. So if it was one of those things where I was like, okay, if this does not fund through Kickstarter, I can use all these images as my marketing for my show. So it became this sort of like this project that had sort of a fail safe if it didn't work out, we couldn't get it published. So
you already had that's never good when you go in with a plan B ready to go.
Well, I think in that situation it was good. I do agree that normally it's bad because I could still use it even if it succeeded, but it was kind of a fun. And I think I ended up doing that for a while. I used parts of those images as my, and actually made it easier too because I was basically the model for the main character. So I could take if my wife is way better illustrator than I am, so we would a lot of times use some of my promo photos or, like if we needed something, we could take a photo for her reference if she needed it for some reason. But yeah, that was sort of a fun project. It's sort of funny because it was political a little bit, and we've had several times. It's kind of talked about like the idea of if like we the fiscal cliff or whatever. And it was funny because I didn't really know much about it when I started, and then like it kind of like we almost hit it a couple times since then. So every time we almost hit the I think it's just called the fiscal cliff, where basically if the government runs out of money, it's happened several times where I was like, oh, that's interesting, but and then we did a motion comic is kind of like the trailer for that.
I'm looking up.
It's animationscelebrationfest.com.
Yep, exactly.
So yeah, check it out. Looks like a fun time. So how did you get started in film? How do you go from magic to film?
So I've always had an interest in film and animation, but it was never like thought of as like back when I started doing it, I was very much like a lone wolf on the project. Like no, I didn't know anyone who was interested in film.
Right. Yeah.
And it was like my parents had a VHS camcorder. And so it just kind of like playing with
big.
Yeah, it was like I was trying to find an image of it to show my students, and it was hard to even find a photo of like what those look like. And so there was a point where I realized there was no way to edit it. So then I kind of came up with this idea where I'm like, and I think this is like one of those things where like 100 kids or thousands of kids across the world kind of figured it out at some point. If I took two VCRs and hooked them up together, I could sort of do very rough editing. So I'd hit play and then record and then stop and then rewind. And basically I would use these two VCRs as like an editing bay. And then eventually I realized, oh, I can actually change this audio cord and hook it up to my my stereo and add audio, but I never quite figured out, which I'm sure I can figure out now, but I didn't have any resources really to like buy. I'm sure if I got you could probably get two audio cables to go to one.
Yeah.
But basically I would just use the one just because, like I said, my parents, like I lived out in the middle of nowhere on a farm. So it was like me basically like messing around with these things. So I think the first film I ever, quote unquote film I ever edited was, I was really big into paintball in high school. And so I'd taken a bunch of shots of us playing paintball and then edited it with like, Welcome to the Jungle or one of those cool songs.
Yeah.
And so that was sort of starting. And then I too would start doing animation with, I would hit record and then hit like stop right away and then like do a little adjustment and just like do that as fast as I could. It was just
terrible. Yeah, I did that too.
It was so terrible.
Yep.
But it worked relatively. And so, it was always just kind of a hobby. So then when I went to college, I learned, they had like computers and internet and stuff. They had Windows Movie Maker was a big thing. So then I figured out, okay, I can actually use Windows Movie Maker to make animation.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think I did, but there was really no great way to get it off of that, because the internet was so slow. So I actually remember during college doing a little bit more editing with that VCR sort of system. And then jumping to like 2006, I was working at Six Flags. I was still interested in video production, and I got fortunate enough that I was sending out promos to like TV shows, and I got to be on the Tonight Show when Jay Leno was the host.
Oh wow!
And kind of like seeing behind the scenes of that, I was like, oh, this isn't like, it's just like dudes kind of like and women kind of hanging out and like doing this show, and kind of like made it less like this thing that's far off, which it was still. I mean, it was LA, so it was like far off, but it was like it sort of brought the curtain up. Just and that was the same with like performing as well, like doing magic. Early on it was just about like seeing behind the curtain and kind of like getting out the magic books and figuring it out. So it did that for me for video. So then, just like really extremely slowly made that transition from like doing more and more video projects and less magic shows and balloon twisting and whatnot. And so
I think you're a part of you did the Milwaukee Mafia documentary.
That was kind of like my big jump into something more formal. Like before that, I got hired to do that originally. So like the way that kind of went was, I was posting a lot of my stuff on YouTube, and actually at that time I was doing a lot of work with on autism, a lot of like these short things. I think I had gotten a couple grants to do some video projects around just autism awareness and whatnot.
Yeah.
And so someone approached me and was like, hey, I got some funding. Would you be interested in doing this as a YouTube series? And I was like, yeah, that sounds perfect. I'm not super interested in Mafia. I'm interested in true crime, which might be like some future projects we come up with. But like the Mafia itself doesn't interest me a whole lot. But it was sort of like, oh, that'd be a fun opportunity. Long story short, it ended up becoming like a 45-minute documentary. But I'm not like super. It's definitely when I shot it and we filmed it, it was not intended to be like a film.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of stuff now where I'm like, it's like a little hard to watch, because it was. Yeah.
It was a Balistreri family, right? You were following.
My mom worked for Frank Balistreri back in the day. She was a cigarette girl.
Oh, really? Yeah. That's one of those things I never knew anything about the family. I mean, I live in like the Racine area. Mm-hmm. And so it was one of those things where, and that was actually a difficulty with making the film, was like, I knew nothing about it. Like I would never have guessed, like I knew Chicago had, Mafia ties, but I'd never have guessed.
Yeah. Mafia's still around here in Milwaukee.
I'm sure. Yeah. It's almost like, it almost can't, it's like one of those things where
They
It'd be
run
really hard for it to go away.
they run the what do you call them? The slot machines in bars now.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's one of those things where it's almost impossible because it's just like you just have tight knit families who are willing to like, you know, and whatever that looks like, you know, it's not always like, it's not like they're running around shooting people in the streets. They're just protecting each other and protecting each other's businesses from any competition. But yeah, that's so that was interesting. And then I had another weird situation where so anyway, so like a lot of people I will say like, oh, they knew, but when I made the film, there's a good chunk where I'm like just explaining like what the mafia is. So that's been like one of the biggest complaints I've had from people who watch it, is the people who actually, most of the people, I made it for people who are from Milwaukee who know nothing about mafia.
Yeah.
But a lot of people who are actually like the audience for it are people who like mafia. So like that whole, you know, 15 minutes of me explaining it really makes them mad because they're like, you know, it's basically, you know, kindergarten to them, and it's like, like what's the hierarchy of the you know, of the organization?
Yeah.
What is even the, like, there's like whatever the term is that starts with an N.
You were teaching Mafia 101 to some graduate level students.
Exactly. Yeah. And so so one of the things I didn't, and I still don't know a lot. Basically, we interviewed a couple people, and I just turned it into a doc. Actually, a good person, if you're interested in Milwaukee Mafia, is I can't think of his name all of a sudden. He's literally, if you look up Milwaukee Mafia, he literally is the. Yes, yep. He's the guy. If you're interested, because he.
He wrote some good books.
Yeah, and I'd like to learn more. Like, I don't know anything about. I think I'd like to do some future historical documentaries, and you know, he knows all like the process of like getting Freedom of Information Act, and like even when we met him, he was at like the Wisconsin Historical Society, so like he really knows his stuff. The hardest part with him, which is actually a benefit for him, is he's kind of like a no nonsense when it comes to the historical stuff. So if there's anything that's like a rumor, he won't say it on record, and so that was another issue where I think. And I think some of the people who don't like his books is his books are very like textbooky in the sense of like, these are the facts. And a lot of people who are into it, which is similar audiences like that, the documentaries, they're like, they want to hear like these juicy stories. And like, you know, there's the thing that happened in the back of the room where he won't say it unless he has like his like FBI files on it. And so that was the hardest part with the documentary, was like, okay, how do we make this? We have all these facts and we have like the general story, but how do we give it a little bit more flavor? But like I said, actually, as a historian, that's the person you want, because he's gonna be accurate. And if you say, okay, I mean, there's people who are like, this isn't true, and it's like, I just asked Gavin, and he can, he would just be like, it's in the FBI files, man. Like it's a wiretap. Like, you know, we know this happened.
You can do that. You just have to present it in an entertaining way.
Yeah. And I mean, part of it too was the budget. Like there's definitely a lot of stuff. Like we mostly used just like, it was super low budget. So it was a lot of like stock, just using, that was another big complaint, because we were using stock video, but like it had to have we had to pay for the rights. So it was like, you can get a ton of Chicago, you can get a ton of like certain cities, but there's not very much, unless you're going to pay someone to go out and shoot it all. There's not a lot of it for Milwaukee.
No.
And so that was, you know, like I said, it was for YouTube video, you know, that's like really what, like compared to like most YouTube videos, that's really well. But then when you look at like a film, you know, that like the quality or the amount of money you put into it is different. So that was the biggest struggle, I guess, with that, making that film. And that was like the first one that I would consider like felt like an actual film, as opposed to just like YouTube videos. So I do have a story with that. So then I didn't, like I said, I don't know the history, so I got done with it, and we did a screening in Racine, and a lot of people showed up. It was actually scary because we did it with the library, and they had like a room for like 40 people, and we had 1,000 people RSVP or something nuts.
Wow.
And probably like 200 and some showed up, and so they had to move it to a new location last minute.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was like a nightmare, because we did it at a Masonic Lodge in Racine, and so it wasn't really an ideal place. But long story short, there was a lot of weird things that popped up. But like the weirdest was the son of Pellissieri, I think it's John. I don't even know, but he showed up and was not super happy about that.
That's never good.
Yeah. It was a bit nerve-wracking, but it turned out fine. But he definitely berated me for a while and berated the executive producer for a while, and it was definitely a weird.
Why did he do that?
Yeah.
I think there's a mixed thing. I think part of it was a control issue, like, his personality type.
Yeah.
But then also through it, because actually Gavin, who's in it, who actually was there too, but he's kind of friends with him in a way. I won't call them friends, but they know of each other, and I think so Gavin knew that he's actually working on his own book, so I don't know if it was like some kind of thing around that where he didn't want, I don't know. I could see how there would be a little bit of pain, because he is mentioned in the film. He lost his bar license because of the fact, because the whole family were all lawyers.
Yeah.
And so he lost his ability to be a lawyer because of his ties, basically working for the mafia. And so I assume that's part of it as well. It was funny because his biggest issue was that we mentioned prostitution as one of the things that the mafia does, and he was very adamant that they never did prostitution. And so I was just like, that's the hill you're gonna die on? Like the murders, like not so much. It's like that was like, but I just let him vent, and so he, like I said, it was just let him yell at me for a while, and then it was just awkward.
We don't pay for sex.
Yeah, but they had strip clubs, they had all these things, and they did they definitely were some murders that were mentioned that they know were loosely tied to. I mean, they didn't do it themselves, but was tied to the family for sure. So at least 2 or 3.
Yeah, I'm sure more than that. None that we can prove, though. But, who knows?
Yeah. I'm curious to know when he comes back. Is how do we know it's the mafia and they're just still around?
How do we know? Well,
if we know that they're criminals and like we just can't pin anything, or
go play some slot machines at a bar in Milwaukee.
Okay.
See if you get your legs broken.
What?
Yeah, they run all the slot machines out of bars. You get big payout, you got to get paid by the mob.
But there's not like progressive payouts on those. Most you're going to win is a couple $100.
Maybe that's all it takes, Tom.
What are my legs worth? A couple $100.
Find out. You need the money.
Yeah.
He'll be back.
He'll definitely be back. Yeah. There's a lot more we wanted to get to with Jason. He does a podcast. He does a lot with the autism awareness. Just cool dude. And I wasn't even expecting all the magic stuff. And you don't really talk about your magic stuff that much.
It was just my childhood. It's like, to me, it was normal. Like some kids have dads that, are cops, and that's just the way it is. They don't talk about it. But let me pull up some other pictures, see if I can find some cool ones while we're waiting. Yeah, that's how my mom and dad met. My dad was doing a show, and my mom knocked over some of his props behind the stage, and that's how they met.
And he's like, you break it, you bought it, woman.
Pretty much.
Work off that prop price.
Sure. Where are we?
My mom was worried I was going to be a serial killer because my dad used to trap raccoons, and I always wanted to go down there and help them, skin them and tan them and stuff. She's like, a 5-year-old shouldn't be down there seeing that. I'm like, I think it's cool.
These are all the acts that he had. He did Santa Claus, Fabulous Freddy, Kai Jurgens Circus, Punch and Judy Puppets, Willie the Tramp, Karen Ray and Congo, Fundini. He never got off the ground, though.
There we go, Jason. What's Punch and Judy Puppets?
That's he built this huge stage for
hey, Jason.
Shows. And Punch and Judy was the show that he did.
Punch and Judy probably wouldn't fly for a show name nowadays, huh?
That wouldn't fly. No.
Maybe historical. Yeah, that's a pretty old. You said they had. I missed it. Did they have an old? You said
he did a Punch and Judy puppet show.
Okay.
Back in the 70s. That would definitely not fly today in today's culture.
Just kind of like the classic,
the husband Punch beating the crap out of his wife Judy with a club.
Judy. Mr. Punch. That was his name. And wife Judy. Don't marry Mr. Punch.
Off the Rails podcast says your mom says choking the geese too. LOL.
Oh, feeding the geese, Ma. It's feeding the geese.
Feeding geese, mom.
What is that a euphemism for?
Oh, just do the feeding the geese motion and you'll know.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I've never heard that one.
Sometimes you got to feed the geese, Ma.
You probably have to go again. So many times. So what are you working on right now?
That's a good question. What am I working on right now? I'm finishing up a bunch of projects. So I'm finishing up. I do some workshops with youth in the area with video production. So we have one more of those coming up. And the animation fest. I'm actually trying to get some time off. It's sort of funny because like with COVID, you think having that huge time off where gigs were the few magic shows I do and a lot of other, even like the workshops, a lot of them fell off. But
yeah,
having the kids home full time, it's been really hard to like find the time to do a lot of that stuff. But
yep.
So my goal is, and it's been this for a long time, is to catch up on a lot of like the projects that are half done. So like one was let's see. So I have one documentary that I'm helping someone else with on circumcision. That one's basically done, but it just needs to. It's similar to where it's a lot of B-roll. It's not. Basically, he had done a podcast. What's that?
You need interviews on that? Because I'm somewhat of an expert on that.
Oh, yeah? No, I think we might do a second one. The issue is they did it from a podcast. And there's a huge... That's the thing, too, doing the Mafia stuff and kind of like testing out the different stuff is it's interesting to find out, there is a huge market for this. And the circumcision's one where there's a
How do you find out there's a huge market for a documentary for a circumcision?
You just put it out, and then the person I'm working with did it as a podcast. And basically, I just took the podcast and we came up with basically B-roll clips to like fill in. And so even like I kind of just seeing like how people react to the whatever they.
Did you include the African tribe that does that to women?
No, we really focused it more on like. And I actually haven't listened to it to a while because it's like I said, it's been in my like hard drive for a long time. It's almost done, but it is a lot about like just current, like why is it done?
Okay.
Sort of. I think there's a little bit of history, but a lot of it is like certain there's activist groups around it, and so like interviews with them.
I'm not really an expert on circumcision.
Okay. Yeah, I was gonna say. I thought you were gonna talk about modeling for the documentary because try to keep it.
If there's enough cheddar involved.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, see, that was fun because it is hopefully just going to be a YouTube video. Oh, that was going to say is that the downside to him doing the podcast was he used like music that I'm just like we can't use that and he doesn't want to redo it. So it becomes just only allowed on YouTube. But
was he using Welcome to the Jungle on that too?
It would have been a good one. I don't even remember. Again, I don't remember what it was. But
when I think circumcision, I just want to rock.
Well, he does a lot of like where you have like movie clips, like sound clips from movies, like what like I can't even think of any right now, but like
that's fair use, right?
I think so, but he does use music as well. I think you can get away with it. It's one of those things where I'm not knowledgeable enough to say on that stuff.
You better be safe than sorry. You don't want any type of lawsuit.
Yeah, and with the Mafia documentary, we did use some stuff where I'm like, okay, I'm assuming I'm good with this historical photos that this will be covered under fair use. Because I think there's like, it's a lot of gray areas that it's not enough money to be made to like, unless it was like a huge budget, it's not enough money to get a lawyer to like, actually give me the feedback on that stuff.
Right.
My wife's really into true crime. I'm like moderately into true crime. Like I'm interested, but not on her level. So I want to kind of create a YouTube series around true crime. Mostly so that she can kind of like take that over and give her and monetize it because there is a huge audience for that.
Chris actually turned me on to the phrases of YouTube that you can't say and now I look more into it. And the true crime podcast are having a really, really hard time because you can't say things like, and then he killed this person or this person.
You can't use kill. You can't name a lot of serial killers. Naming Jeffrey Dahmer. there you go. I just did it. But like Facebook also did a real big crackdown recently on serial killer memes. They took down the serial killer memes. But
that makes sense.
Do you know John Borowski? Have you ever networked with him?
I'm not familiar now.
Oh, I should connect you guys. But he's a true crime documentary filmmaker. If you've seen a true crime documentary on Netflix, John probably directed it. He did the Albert Fish, Carl Graham. What else? He's working on a Gacy one right now, but fantastic, absolutely fantastic true crime documentary.
Yeah, I'd love to just connect and maybe pick his brain a little bit. Yeah, because there's a lot of stuff where, like, definitely serial killers, one where I would stay away from for the most part, just because I don't want to offend anybody, but like they're like diehard fans kind of scare me sometimes. I've had scary situations with people.
I know some people that are like that collect locks of their hair, collect letters, and
and I don't blame them for it. I just don't want. I've kind of learned, especially like with the Mafia one too, is kind of like, okay, you need to know who would you get along with this audience. Is kind of an important part of I think if you're thinking of it as like a long-term business model. Like a lot of Mafia guys, I just don't relate to just because they're really into like this like sort of machismo Goodfellas sort of feel, and I'm just like, I don't really care. Like I don't.
There's some really good true crime YouTube channels I subscribe to. That Chapter, I really like him.
Okay.
There's some woman that my daughter watches. My daughter's really into true crime YouTube videos too, so it's fascinating. Why are we so obsessed about true crime? Why are we obsessed about serial killers?
Yeah, I put that out on Facebook because I was kind of curious too. Because that's my other fear is I always kind of think about what is the repercussion, what is the repercussions of me making this video? I think about like partially because of like Making the Murder and some of those films, even like the morality of like documentary filmmaking. Oh, actually, a great one. I don't know the name of the documentary, but there's a variety entertainer who got his business destroyed because I feel bad because I can't remember the details, but I had heard this, and I won't say the guy's name because I don't want it to hurt his business. Yeah. Basically, he was a kids entertainer, and some guy who's a documentary filmmaker was doing a documentary on, I believe, his brother, and like his brother got sort of accused of pedophilia or something, but it came out that there was like the charges or whatever he was accused of, and again I don't know the details, were dropped. Like it turned out they weren't true, and there was evidence that there wasn't true. But they didn't put that in the documentary because it made it not as good of a documentary.
Right. Yeah.
And so this guy lost his business, who wasn't even, it was just because he was brothers and they had this, brothers with him. He basically took him a half a decade to like build his business back up. And ironically, I actually met him at Houdini Days in Appleton. There was a couple of years they had this event. And so I didn't know him well, but I had met him. And so it was sort of crazy to be like, oh, this dude is being destroyed because of this documentary that like the documentary filmmakers. And so there's a lot of documentary or even ones that are on Netflix where I'm just like, that's really like, that feels like, is that immoral to put that information out if that's incorrect, or just it's like what's more important, truth or a good story? And so there's definitely a lot out there that go to the truth story or they want a better story and not necessarily a true representation. And so
I think it's just attractive to people because it goes to your primal instinct. Like I just watched a Facebook video of a seagull trying to go after a goose's nest, and the goose just went over and drowned it and killed it, and that was totally natural. Now, if we didn't have a society, like there's two things to it. If we didn't have a society, those feelings that we get about somebody doing something and wanting to kill them don't just arise. They're like naturally in you. And then people want to know their limits of what would it take from me to cross, I don't care about consequences, to actually do that to someone? Is there anything, or what would have to happen? And I think it's just an attractive primal urge that people like hearing, like, oh, well, that happened to that person. I wonder what I would do in his situation.
Yeah. I think another response was the mystery, like, if it's set up that way of like they like to try to, if you have it,
if you could hide it,
well, how to solve it, or even from that as well as like how would like my wife and I joke about that occasionally, where where would you hide a body kind of thing.
Yeah, that's that they call it murder porn.
Yeah. Because I never understood like where they cut up bodies and put them in different spots. I'm like, you just like increase the chances someone is going to stumble upon it like if you cut a body into 6, now you have 6 spots that someone could stumble upon a body instead of 1 spot. Like I never understood that when people did that. The logic.
You just Horcruxed yourself, and all they need is 1.
Yeah.
I'm thinking there.
But yeah, I think that's interesting. I just don't. Yeah, I think that's why people are interested in it. I think you agree, and I think too. It just makes a good, especially if they're caught. Someone else said that when I posted that on Facebook. They said it also becomes like a perfect story because you have the act structure of like the event, and then at the end, the result, the person caught. But I think there's something too to like the ones who haven't been caught. There's sort of that mystery.
Just still out there.
Yeah.
Don't hitchhike. That might be the guy that picks you up.
That's probably good advice.
I was just watching a documentary on YouTube about some road in Canada that is like
400 plus?
Yeah, like 400 women have disappeared.
Jeez.
And 401 women drive it. It's like never driven.
Yeah.
He gets just about all of them.
You think that after, 100, 200 people would learn their lesson, don't hitchhike on this road. It's like a desolate road in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, it's way out there.
Why would you be hitchhiking on this random?
You got to bring gas with you.
Oh, that's terrifying. Huh. Is it do you know if it ends up being a lot of like I think they use a different term, but native people, or does it tend to be
a lot of them were the native indigenous people
in
northern Canada.
That makes sense. We had someone submit last year to the animation festival, but I've heard that a lot. The native indigenous women in that in Canada, especially like the more
the Highway of Tears, it's called.
There you go.
Geez.
Yeah.
Especially like the more rural areas, like there is a lot like an unbelievable amount of of things like that happening where it's just terrifying, but not really talked about.
Molly said,
I kind of want to go.
Yeah.
Have fun. British Columbia.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's terrifying.
Does it say how many people or how many women disappeared?
They got a list, and it's really, really long. It's pages and pages and pages and pages, and I'm still scrolling.
Jeez.
Wow.
Like the population there isn't that big, like 4 maybe. Pull all those people in, talk to them.
The ones that they have details of 80 plus from 1998 on. So
how long of a stretch is the road?
725 kilometers, whatever that means. 450 miles.
We're American. We don't do those kilometers.
Gotta hear what your fake measurement.
Yeah, it's about 42 meters over there.
I could take that guy. He's only 158 centimeters tall.
Yeah, he weighs less than a stone. Yeah, we have no idea what we're talking about. At least I don't.
No, I have no idea.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's fun.
Yeah. Got anything else to add about the Highway of Tears?
Nope. Just nobody's caught.
Nobody's caught. Yeah. And you wonder how many serial killers are in the United States that haven't been caught. And I think I read a statistic once that there's always serial killers, always that large. I can't remember the number, but it was crazy.
It reminds me of. Have you ever seen the movie Suspect Zero?
Yeah,
that was a good one. They kind of touch on that in that movie. Yeah. It's really good.
Oh, did you see Mindhunter on Netflix?
I have, yeah. I only watched the first season though. Yeah, that was really good as well.
Second season is really good. I don't know if we're going to get third though, but maybe we'll see. There's
an actor from Milwaukee who's in Mindhunter. I'm trying to remember his name's escaping me all of a sudden, but I think it's Aaron. But he plays like one of the last character. Is it Aaron? It'll come to me. But he's like the last. He's like one of the last characters he's in the season finale.
Okay.
I feel bad. I can't think of him because I've actually he talked to my class at one point, so I can't think of his name all of a sudden.
Milwaukee represent.
Yeah.
Okay, they have 80 people confirmed dead, 1,200 missing.
1,200 missing.
Jesus.
It went from 2014 to now 900 to 1,200 missing.
Wow.
But they only have 80 confirmed dead. Just missing.
Jesus.
Yeah, they need to put some resources into that. That's crazy.
Yeah. Jeez.
All these missing women are going to be in this guy's house.
Wow.
They got a warehouse of bodies.
I know. This guy's got to get up early.
On the same road? Yes. Yes, Molly, on the same road. The Highway of Tears in British Columbia. How north is that? That's not that north.
No. Wow. And they're calling them Canada's missing and murdered Aboriginal women. I thought Aborigines were Canadian, but I should probably stop talking because I don't know what I'm talking about right now.
Molly says it's got to be more than one guy. Oh, it's Bigfoot colony. Could be.
Yeah.
Adam Zastros is the guy who I was thinking of.
Okay.
I just had to look it up because it was going to bother me.
Very cool. All right. Well, I guess that's all we have time for. We should wrap things up. We've been going over an hour.
Definitely.
Did you have anything that you wanted to plug, Jason?
No, if you want to, I guess check out the YouTube channel, the Animation Celebration Fest, and then I kind of use my YouTube channel as like a catch-all for whatever I'm working on. So if you want to check that out, just go to youtube.com/JasonLovesLife. Yeah, that's all I can think of now. So appreciate being on the show. It's been a lot of fun.
Hey, it was a blast.
A lot of fun. Hopefully we can have these fun-loving morticians on one of these weeks. I know I keep promising that, but I guess the bodies keep piling up in Milwaukee. So we'll be
They're
back.
shipping them down from Canada.
There you go. We'll be back next week with someone new or old. Join us.